The National Coordinating Centre for Public Engagement recognises public engagement as the multiple ways in which members of the public can be involved in the process of conducting, designing and disseminating research. Over the last few years, Birkbeck has offered the background as well as the infrastructure for conducting hundreds of research projects with a public engagement element. This documentary seeks to celebrate the rich and diverse public engagement landscape at the college, reflecting on some of its biggest challenges as well as, of course, some of its biggest benefits.
We consider public engagement to be bringing the general public into the fold of what we're doing. So stop hiding behind white coats and laboratories and coming out and showing exactly what we're doing. It's not mysterious, it's fun and exciting. For this experiment, we've created a set of puzzle boxes
to look at how different ape species use their hands to solve problems.
Yes, I think public engagement is really important for the academic world, particularly at Birkbeck. We talk at Birkbeck passionately about widening participation in education. So when we talk about students, we're always talking about widening participation. That's our mission. And I think for me, public engagement is about extending that aim of widening participation to the research. So widening participation isn't just about teaching, widening participation is about the research as well.
Who are the public? It's very wide. Who's the public? Anybody who's interested.
First of all, you have to think about who do you want to engage, because public engagement is something that the public. There's no kind of general public. The public is related to first what the research is about, but also who do you want to engage.
So I worked for about 10 years as a socially engaged art curator practitioner, and my PhD was really informed and about that practice. So I've entered academia with a practice, I suppose, and it made sense to me just to continue doing that practice, and because that's what I know. That's how I know how to interact with ideas in the world. So in terms of the subject of the research I'm doing and my methodology and my methods, they are at their core socially engaged, and so the process of talking with others about issues, ideas, questions has always been part and parcel of what I do.
So the public in my research is very varied. At one end, it's practitioners who are making day-to-day decisions in an area of law and practice. So I was asked to train judges, so running seminars and giving lectures to High Court and Family Court judges, which was a tough audience. And they're actually making day-to-day decisions about children's lives. And so the real question was, how could my research actually help a judge who's got a decision to make about whether a brother and sister should be kept together or not, or whether one of the brothers should be adopted, which would mean they'd probably never see their sisters again.
My film was about social media and how it controls everything you do from start to finish, like every day.
It's about drill music and like the controversy around all of it. And so we're sort of like looking at all the aspects of it kind of and coming to a conclusion at the end of it of what our opinion is.
We see a lot in the media, like a lot of people are like, they want to blame drill music. So instead of us saying whether we blame it or we don't blame it, we just wanted to explore it instead, because it's better to have an open mind than just decide one viewpoint. So then that's why we had all the interviews and the discussions, because we wanted to see how other people felt about it, not just have our own opinions.
How many times did we take them trips?
The highlight of this experience for me was the exhibition side of things, because several of the films made by these students were selected by film curating students at Birkbeck to a screen at the British Film Institute's Future Film Festival for 2 years running. Seeing these students watching their own films on the big screen at the BFI was really fantastic, and I could see how it was just giving them confidence minute by minute to think that they might have a future as filmmakers, and to understand that there was a broader audience and public that they could engage with their films.
We operate out of this cinema. This is, I think of it as being our laboratory, if you want to use that term. It's a beautifully equipped cinema with fantastic projection facilities. It's obviously integrated into our research environment, but with a very specific idea that a cinema is a public space, it's a friendly space, it's a space where people feel very at home. Everybody's been to see a movie, everybody knows what it's like to go into a darkened room and see amazing things on a screen. So I think it allows for a very specific type of public engagement because, as it were, you've got the magic and the power and the seduction of the cinema, but also it's very deliberately and unapologetically a research space, so a space where we try to share ideas, where we try to share information, where we try to create debates and discussion. We typically run events on a Friday night and or on a Saturday afternoon, sometimes both. So in our most busy years, we've probably done 70 public events per year, in addition to which we have an annual film festival, which is called the Essay Film Festival, which we do in collaboration with the ICA down the road, with the Goethe Institute, the French Institute, and other venues. But most of the festival takes place here. And again, I suppose with the Essay Film Festival, we're talking about a cinema of ideas, a cinema of information, a cinema of debate.
When I founded the gallery in 2013, it was actually premised on the importance of engaging a broad public with the research that we do, but also importantly, I think I really felt that a lot of the research that we were doing was research which had a real impact in real life terms, and it had consequences and implications for life way beyond an academic research project.
Our research is fundamentally dependent on the public. So first of all, engaging, there are different dimensions to that. So engaging with the public makes the public aware of our research, aware of the importance of what we do, and therefore more willing to come in and take part in our research. So that's a direct kind of route. I think there's a more indirect route as well, which is that our research is externally funded. It's critically dependent on funding from charities, learned societies, and government organizations. And, these organizations listen to what the public wants. If the public finds something important, it eventually, and interesting, such as maybe healthy child development, it eventually finds its way up to the kind of government research funders who think, oh, okay, this is an important topic. So it's got this kind of indirect route as well.
Public is a very kind of general term. Like, who do you like to engage with? Like, you want to share your PhD research with a scientist. How do you do that? So making that environment is the most challenging stuff. Like, people will not initially listen to your idea. They would not let you do things that you want to do, and they will not kind of spend that kind of amount of time and enthusiasm to start that dialogue.
এতে ভয়ের কোনো কারণ নেই। তাই বলছি, এই রোগ যদি কারো হয়, সময় মতো যদি হাসপাতালে চলে আসতে পারে, তাহলে তো রোগ আর থাকবে না। ডাক্তার বাবু, আর একটা কথা মনে রেখো, যখন রোগীর কাশি লাগবে, তখন নাকে মুখে রুমাল চেপে কাশতে হবে এবং থুতু এবং কফ যেখানে সেখানে ফেলবে না, নির্দিষ্ট জায়গায় ফেলতে হবে। আর রাত্রে যখন শোবে, তখন ওইরকম একদিকে কাত হয়ে শুতে হবে যাতে অন্য কারো কিছু না হয়। তাহলে এর কোনো ভয় নেই? হ্যাঁ, ভয় আছে। এটা সত্যি ছোঁয়াচে রোগ, কিন্তু সময় মতো চিকিৎসা করালে এই রোগের সেরে যায়, কোনো অসুবিধা হয় না।
Hi, I'm Suyoshi Basu. I'm the founder of the Joy Hug Initiative.
Idea was that she will use the local folk art, and she will engage those artists and singers and bring them to the public through that music, through those art forms. They will then explain the scientific facts to the public. So immediately when people came in and joined those events, they came for music, they came to see those folk art, but they got the story, and that story was about an infectious disease like tuberculosis. A story was about how antibiotic resistance developed, how important antibiotic discovery is, and how they contributed to our society day to day. So how important it is that we use those antibiotics in a controlled way.
The collections at Kew include not only living plants and seeds, but also a vast number of pressed plant specimens kept in the herbarium and associated correspondence, books, journals and lists made by plant collectors and curators, which are kept in the library and archives. The shield is collected in the Upper Rio Negro region by the botanist Richard Spruce, a keen naturalist, linguist and explorer.
Sometimes things don't work, just don't work, the people don't want to talk to you, they don't, people don't want to engage. And so how to make people interested in what you're doing, I think that's the big challenge really, because it's not obvious.
But I think it is clear that there will be growing requirement really from the different funding bodies on academics at universities to, in a way, shape research projects, certainly into big interdisciplinary, well-funded projects to meet this brief. So I think that, I think both, they may be knocking on an open door because many researchers clearly in the humanities and social sciences and so on are interested anyway in this kind of two-way dialogue and breaking down these barriers. But I think regardless of that, there will be pressures for those who want to go through the hoops and jump the hurdles of getting funding to demonstrate that the research is widely accessible, that it is responsive, that it is sort of dialogic.
We are accountable to our publics. We need to engage with them. We need to learn from them because, of course, public engagement has to be two ways. So this has become so much more important. And indeed, funding bodies now actually require it. The Wellcome Trust, who fund my projects, my last two projects, have dedicated grants for public engagement, and they provide a lot of support for that.
If you want to make a case, and I would want to make a case, if you want to make a case for universities being public institutions, if you want to say that there's a public interest in universities, that the public should fund universities, then I think it's a good idea to let people know what you're doing and to communicate what you're doing to the broader public.
It's important if you're working with, at least in this case, working in the indigenous communities, to give something back. Because that's what they ask us, I say, okay, we are telling you all about, the way we do these artifacts, and so what are you giving us back, So if you can give something back, it's great, it's rewarding, and it's part of the negotiation, to have, to gain trust as well, they have to see that it's a genuine exchange. It's not just us taking things from them.
I think public engagement is often quite an ethical way of doing research. I think there's an ethical dimension to it. A lot of socially, politically committed research is about vulnerable people, about marginalised people, about people on the outside of society, people who are denied human rights. And some of my research has been about children in the public care system. Probably one of the most vulnerable groups in society. And If I can write books and articles about these people and get promoted and have a career on the basis of writing about vulnerable, marginalised people, I think it's important to think, well, how do these people benefit from my research? Would they even know about the research? What is your relationship with the people and the subjects that you're researching? So I think that's an ethical aspect of public engagement.
When you close your eyes on the 11th of November to remember those who died in all of the wars, what is the colour of your memory? Have you imagined black servicemen instead of white servicemen? I would be surprised if the answer was yes, because after the war, military and colonial officials from the British Empire made a determined effort to keep the memory of Africans and Caribbeans out of the war.
I mean, it's been enormously rewarding to have this opportunity to do this work and to have the budget to sort of engage with, the film unit at Birkbeck and then with schools and so on. But it has been very challenging. I mean, partly a challenge at the college to have the necessary infrastructure to support these kinds of applied work in the community, which raises all sorts of problems. I mean, about contracts, about intellectual property rights. Certainly it was difficult for me to get my head around all of those intricacies.
Organizing, contacting people, thinking about who are going to do what kinds of events you're going to do with whom, all these apparatus, to make public engagement happen need support.
I think one of the challenges of public engagement, like most things in life, it just takes lots of time.
And the time spent can be enormous. I can remember one year, even though I was delighted to speak at all three political parties, I spoke at their conferences in fringes. That takes out a huge chunk of time at the beginning of term, going to 3 different conferences and speaking. And if anything, it is hugely time consuming when you present a briefing, a policymaker picks it up, but some of the peers in the House of Lords, and they say, will you come along to the debate? And then will you help write with the speech? They're very good at getting you to do things. Then would you contribute to speech writing? Would you check my speech? Then you attend their speech. And it's very nice. It's delightful to be then taken to dinner at the House of Lords and what have you. And then their speeches are cut down from 30 minutes to 9 minutes. So you're hurriedly doing a rapid edit job late at night when they're speaking. So you can get swept up and then end up acting as an unpaid advisor when you've got other duties in the department and what have you. So you could argue at one stage in my career it was certainly detrimental, and I continued doing it. One, because you just feel it's so important. You feel really privileged to be able to do the kind of research that you love and you care about. But if you care about that, you then feel you have a duty. If it's publicly funded, you have a duty to let those who are making the laws that really impact on people's lives. There is a public duty to do that, and that certainly disadvantaged me in terms of those sort of publication rankings. Now research it has become broader in that they look at impact and they look at those kind of things.
For me, engaging with the public has been incredibly invaluable, not just to my own personal growth, but also to the advancement of my own research. Public will ask you questions you've never thought about. That's also why I love teaching, because students will ask you things from perspectives that you hadn't considered, and it actually does help to advance your research.
The last thing that engagement has helped us understand is the kind of vast, let's say, canyon of misunderstanding that can exist between the basic science community and the kind of applied or end user, be they parents or teachers. And that's not placing a value on who has the right understanding or not. It's that these different communities tend to use similar words with slightly different understandings, and that leads to a complete miscommunication. So when we were talking to teachers about kind of learning in math and science, we realized that basic neuroscientists, for example, have a very, very different meaning for the word learning that teachers have. So, in education, learning is part of, it's a big social dynamic construct. So, we learn things in a school, which is embedded within a society and the kind of priorities and objectives of society and so forth. Whereas for neuroscientists, the real hardcore ones who work with like neurons in Petri dishes, learning is simply just the growth of connections between two neurons. And in a way, they're both talking about the same thing, but in another way, they're in different universes. And so to have an effective communication between these two worlds, you have to first start to kind of bridge that kind of semantic meaning gap.
One of the great challenges to public engagement is getting people to understand that science is super broad, and it's not just the traditional A-level subjects that students learn, like biology, physics, and chemistry. In fact, I didn't even know that you could be a comparative cognitive scientist or a behavioral psychologist or an evolutionary psychologist when I was a student. And I think by sharing what we do with the public in a very open and honest manner is so important for those future generations of scientists who are going to be studying and coming up through the ranks, that we can mentor them and show them how wonderful and broad science is.
People are very interested in academic ideas if you can get them across in a kind of more normal way.
And it's rewarding as well, to do something that you feel that there is a need somewhere there, for your piece of research. It's a good feeling, makes it your work valuable, I think, in different ways, not just to the academic community.
So we have Arts Week, we have Law on Trial, we have Science Week. I think those are amazing initiatives, and they're all relatively recent, where we just open ourselves up to the world and say, this is what we're doing, this is really exciting, come along and listen to it. The Pelts Gallery just behind me, I think has had the most incredible impact on public engagement at Birkbeck. I've seen some fantastic exhibitions there. It's an art gallery, but across all disciplines have been using it. And I love the idea that an academic has a 2-week slot to show the visual dimension to their research, or to think about the research and to turn it into an exhibition.
And the other thing that became clear about the Pelts is that it became an experimental space as well. So it became a space for testing out ideas with the Birkbeck community, with our students, with academic staff and researchers and administrators, everybody, in fact, that was part of the environment of the place. It also became a kind of safe place, a space for the dialogue and conversations about often very difficult and painful histories, painful pasts. It became a place to explore dimensions of various political issues, pressing political issues that actually are difficult to talk about in certain kinds of public spaces, but because of the gallery being an enclosed space, which also explored in somewhat experimental terms often critical political issues, it became a place where people felt safe to explore these in an open way.
I think doing things online has been an interesting experience, and there are some positive aspects of it, obviously in terms of reaching out to people who are either not in London or people who wouldn't think of coming to Bloomsbury necessarily.
And I don't think we're going to go back to a pre-COVID world because we've already seen some of the cost benefits and the democratization of people, accessibility benefits for those who are disabled or couldn't afford to travel or couldn't afford to, be coming into London. So harnessing social media as well and, digital technologies, I do think that because we already have the venue in order to get the atmosphere and the dynamism, we also know that things just on social media can be a bit more flat and don't work quite as well as having the buzz in the room. But that combination, Birkbeck are so well placed to be able to harness and deliver and provide in the public space. I think it's you know, there are a lot of opportunities there that are quite exciting.